Hello, and welcome to the Steps to Happiness show on Soul Livity TV. I'm your host, Teresa Greco, happiness coach, author, editor, writer, educator, and Reiki master. Are you ready to take the necessary steps towards true, unwavering inner happiness? If so, the Steps to Happiness show is for you. On my show, you will learn about the principles and practices that lead to true inner happiness. Because guess what? It isn't found in our external environment, but is within ourselves instead. Together with my guests, we'll explore the latest physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well being practices. And together, we'll advise you on the actionable steps you can take towards a happier, more fulfilled, authentic life. The happiness principle for today's show is a return to peace. I don't need to tell you that we live stressful lives in this fast paced world. According to the American Psychological Association, who surveys people across the United States each year about stress, the 2020 survey reveals that Americans have been profoundly affected by the COVID-19 pandemic and the external stress factors Americans have listed in previous years also remain present and problematic. These compounding stressors are having real consequences on our minds and bodies. Nearly half of adults, 49%, report their behavior has been negatively affected, with 21% reporting increased tension in their bodies. 20% are snapping or getting angry very quickly. 20% are experiencing unexpected mood swings, and 17% are screaming and yelling at loved ones more often. What speaks to the hardships many Americans may be confronting at this moment is the fact that nearly 2 in 3 adults, 65%, say the current amount of uncertainty in our nation causes them stress. And 3 in 5, 60%, say the number of issues America faces currently is overwhelming them. Stress is your body's way of responding to pressure, any kind of demand or threat. It is often triggered when we experience something new, unexpected, or that threatens our sense of self, or when we feel that we have little control over a situation. When you sense danger, whether it's real or imagined, the body produces stress hormones that trigger a fight or flight response and activates our immune system. The stress response in the body is the body's way of protecting you. When working properly, it helps you to stay focused, energetic, and alert. It can help us push through fear or pain so we can run a marathon or deliver a speech, for example. However, beyond a certain point, stress stops being helpful, and too much stress can cause negative effects. It can leave us in a permanent state of fight or flight, leaving us feeling overwhelmed or unable to cope, thus causing major damage to our health, mood, productivity, relationships, and quality of life. So, what can we do to realign ourselves with the love, peace, and happiness that we are? Because the peace that we are searching for exists within us. We are peace, but we've lost touch with that peace. So what we need to do is to take steps to bring us back to ourselves. We need to get back in touch with the peace that exists always there at our core. So how do we do that? One way is to go inward and connect with our spiritual self, where peace resides. If the outside world is in disarray and feels chaotic, it makes sense that we would go inward to find the calm and clarity we're looking for. That part of us is always centered and grounded. No matter what's happening in our outside world, the peace and happiness at our core is unwavering and always present. When we feel out of balance and are experiencing dis-ease in the body, those are clues that we need to go inward and connect with the love, peace, and happiness that exists within us at every present moment. What practices can we turn to that can help us to connect to that part of ourselves that is already calm and at peace? That's what my guests and I are going to look at today on the Steps to Happiness show. So let me welcome my first guest. He's a mindfulness and mindset coach. Ryan Coons, hello and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Teresa. It's great to be here with you.
Now, Brian, when clients come to you to do, well, maybe let's start off if you could talk about what do you help clients with in your role?
Well, it's typically stress off the top. I work with a lot of people who are chronically stressed, and the amount of people that are chronically stressed is very significant, high number. It's a very noisy world. So I think people that I work with typically get to a point where they're burning out, they're running into depression, anxiety, addiction, just not finding any peace, not finding any center. So I help people overcome stress through mindfulness practice and other modalities. But it's also my way of sort of opening the door to a little bit greater awakening and awareness within themselves.
Sounds beautiful. Now, when your clients come to you, so you mentioned a couple points already, but maybe you could go into a little bit more of how the stress is affecting their life in various ways. So, how it translates definitely probably to relationships, but maybe if you could go into a little more detail physically also. So, we'll go into a little more detail if you could.
Sure. Um, a lot of people, especially as they get to a certain age, really difficult time sleeping. Uh, Either falling asleep difficult or waking up in the middle of the night. So sleep really is kind of the top of the food chain, really, in terms of mental health and physical health. So people come to me with sleep issues. Um, they're not being productive with work. There's issues with relationships. And just affecting their health, essentially. They don't feel good. They don't feel energetic. They're really having a difficult time just finding peace in simple things, just really finding a moment to sit and just be at peace, regardless of um, how wonderful the exterior may be. Just inside, they're just not feeling fulfilled and happy, and it's just that
Mhm,
chronic stress that's just tearing them down. All the horrible chemicals it releases and the habits it creates.
mhm. Now, today's happiness principle is return to peace. And the reason why it's entitled this way is that I believe we are love, peace, and happiness at our core. That is our essential nature. When we came into this world, we are love, peace, and happiness. We can see that in children. They are that. Living in the moment, curious, infinite possibilities, loving everybody, laughing. Like they are all of those things at peace too, right? And so it is really because then the world takes us away from that and has us feeling a whole host of other things. And so what's important is that to recognize the symptoms that you just spoke about, because those things should be red flags for us to say we are not in alignment with the love, peace, and happiness that we are. We are not in alignment with the peace that we are when our world outside is chaotic. And so the biggest indicator for us when we're not at peace is that our outside world is always reflecting that. It is always a mirror for what's happening inside of us. So if your relationship is chaotic, check in with yourself and say, is the relationship with in alignment with the love, peace, and happiness.
Yeah.
And so all these things outside all start to fall apart in essence and are not functioning properly because we're not in alignment with who we really are. And so that's why this episode is called A Return to Peace, because the peace exists inside of us. It's not only those times when we go on vacation and we've removed ourselves from the chaos of our everyday lives to finally be like, oh my God, this is so peaceful. Do you know that you can find that place within you all the time? The same thing with happiness, right? People are like, oh, I'm so happy on vacation. Yeah, but did you know you didn't have to spend $10,000 to feel happy when happiness is inside you and you could feel it sitting on your back porch? Like it's always inside of us for us to feel. And so, Brian, you've developed a program that you call Rewire. And so, if you could tell us a little bit more about that, because I would love to dive deeper into it if we could.
Yeah, and just what you said, I just loved how you described that. There's part of the rewire is understanding that as much as we are at our core love and peace and happiness and really that connection to the source of all, it's those 10 to 50,000 thoughts a day that are running through our head internally that's creating all that noise. Um, because we are love and peace does not mean, unfortunately, mean our brains are still wired for survival. So we have um, we have so many negative thoughts and negative bias because we still have that brain that's looking out for the saber-toothed tiger on the tree line,
Mhm.
and so we're always worried about everything that could or may. And then the other as well is that of the negative bias or thoughts repeating over the day. So rewiring is really about understanding, going deeper with a practice to allow you to start to identify thoughts as not being facts necessarily, and learning to be more compassionate and kind to yourself with these thoughts. So a lot of people that I work with, a lot of the bias, negative bias, they start to beat on themselves to compound. So it's really about kind of creating some space. So the way the program works is, you mentioned mindset and mindfulness. Those are two big pillars of how I approach it. um, Mindfulness really is a way of being from moment to moment. So learning to calibrate my emotions, understanding this nervous system and this brain is always going into different places depending on what's happening around me, what triggers, what traumas I've had in the body, and being able to start to identify and self regulate through different levers such as meditation, breath work, cold exposure, um, sleep, diet, and exercise, of course, are pillars of health across the board. So just learning a little bit more about how the body works, specifically for yourself, and then remembering in the moment when you start to go down that path where that thought comes in, and if that thought's negative, which is can be quite likely, it can start to weave itself into a little bit of a story, and then it's a narrative. And maybe soon you're ruminating about something that's not even true, which is just taking you down a path and it's creating anxiety for somebody, for example. Or it's that's chaos, and then the rigidity is the people who are living in the past, pulling along that failure from the past, that failed relationship, something that may have happened to them, the young child, that they're not even necessarily aware of anymore, but still feeling it in the body. So using all these different modalities to sort of create integration, what the program's about. But it's one thing to say, okay, let's sit down and practice all these things, but as you know, creating habits is very difficult, and changing patterns is very difficult. So I really am very careful about helping people um, create systems to help them lock these habits down, and just starting slowly and building up, starting to really change the story, and learning step by step on how to sort of create different habits and a different mindset around those habits. Because we're used to telling the same story. We can all tell a new and starting to recognize new patterns, new modalities, then things start to shift and people start to notice a little bit. And really, the goal is just to create enough awareness that you realize that you're not your thoughts, you're not these feelings, you are that love and peace that's there. But we have to return to that, and that's practice, and that's what the work is.
Yes, it is. And it's daily work because the world is constantly pulling us away and we have to constantly check in with ourselves. And I love that breath work is one of the modalities that you use because it is the simplest of things that we can do, that breathing is the essence of life for us, right? That it's what's keeping us alive. We don't even think about it because it's automatic, right? We don't tell ourselves to breathe in, but the moment we die, that's what's gone, right? It's like we're no longer breathing. So that is the essence of being alive, is that breath that we take for granted. And many of us are breathing so shallow that we don't even realize that 100 years ago, we used to have 4 to 6 breaths a minute, inhales and like exhales, 4 to 6. We are now anywhere between 15 to 20. That just like, even when I was like, okay, Teresa, slow your breath down to 4 breaths in 1 minute, to say, have your inhale and exhale be 15 seconds long.
Right.
It's like, oh no, like I'm struggling, like I'm out of breath trying to trying to slow my breath because
Yeah.
we're not used to it. And that just speaks to our our nervous system and how breath is just like a reflection of the fact that so much of us are not like at peace, and our breath is a reflection. So getting connected to that, and is that like something that you do, is getting us to breathe deeply and to slow it down, and how does that immediately trigger that kind of the release of that fight or flight response that like something could trigger, or many of us are even living from that space that we're not even aware of. So tell us maybe a little bit more about how powerful the breath is.
Yeah, that's a great point. We People think, well, we wouldn't survive more than 2 minutes if we didn't breathe, but not too many people take even one conscious breath a day, and that's what you're talking about, a deep breath, and breathing deeply. And to further to your point as well, we're taking all these breaths. Most of them are through the mouth as well. So just the simple practice of just taking deep breaths in through the nose. I have people set notifications to breathe consciously throughout their day, and when you take 6 deep breaths in through the nose, and there's a variety of different practices and small holds and box breathing and different things that activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest. So we're getting into that red zone in our window of tolerance, and people start to realize, like, okay, I need to step back, and I don't feel like breathing right now. I just want to keep pushing against what I'm doing because we just want to keep going, but just to stop, just take all kinds of different breathwork practices and techniques, informal and formal, I call them. So informal would be just a 1 or 2 minute thing, just to quickly zero the meter, bring you right back to present. You're feeling anxious, bring you right back to the moment. And this is a powerful lever, as I used the word earlier, on the nervous system. It just changes us. So we can't use our minds or our thinking to get us out of overthinking. We need to use the body sometimes. So that's why exercise is also very powerful, people. But the breath is so powerful, and breath work itself really gets you into that calmer state. So for those people who are very active, with the monkey mind always going, who can't try to meditate, I hear this all the time. I can't meditate. I sit still for 2 seconds. My body's moving, my arms are moving. I just want to get out of there, right? But just a few cycles of breath work before you practice really brings you to that spot where you can start to kind of dip your toe into that peace and love and tranquility
Mhm.
that's always there just below the noise a little more often and become more familiar with that.
Yes, I love that. And that is, I'm a meditation coach too, and that's one of the things that I say also for those people that say that I've tried meditation and it hasn't worked, is that just come back to your breath. Is that, you're at work, you're feeling frustrated, you're angry, or whatever's like kind of ticked you off, is go into the bathroom stall, go out to your car and just connect to the breathing, and even just trying to focus on the inhale and exhale, and just that, as you said, come to the present moment, just focus on that and do that for as long as you can. A minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, however long that you need, just focusing on that. And as you said, you immediately feel this like this relaxation that just comes all over your whole body as I mean, people call it the chi, right? It's that life energy that's coming into your body, and it's just permeating through everything. Everything's energy, so it makes sense that it would have, such a visceral response on the body, and then going back into the office and tackling what you need to. But it's amazing how just a couple minutes, I'm sure even with meditation, you can attest to the same thing, that even a couple minutes has a drastic physiological response and emotional and mental. Like, it's all, I mean, we're not segmented individuals, right? We are always physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual selves all at the same time. And so it's interesting that when we do one thing, how it has effects for all of it. But do you say the same thing as a meditation coach? Is that, it doesn't have to be this hour long practice in order to reap the benefits of when we go into that space within ourselves, when we connect to that place within ourselves. We're just connecting with us, but to a place that we don't always go to, that it has such great benefit, even if we go for just a small amount of time.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's it. It's just sort of getting people to kind of just start slowly, get that feeling, and then just long enough to create the habit where your day is not going to be the same day without that practice. And when you really experience that, you wake up in the morning and you just take even a few minutes, and you'll naturally want to spend more time in that place and protect more time to do so as you get into it more often. But where you land at the end of the day, as far as your happiness meter or your stress meter, it's a very different place than if you start, and I always liken it to putting your armor on of resilience for the day. You're really starting your day in the best place because the noise is going to be there. The stress is going to be there. There's all kinds of madness in the world. But we can actually start by just finding our inner sanctuary, putting on our armor of
Mhm.
resilience for the day, and then going out. But throughout the day,
Mhm.
over time, creating more awareness to bring back those wandering thoughts and all uh, crazy things that happen in the mind, and then just finding our center more often. And over time, it becomes natural. This is the cool thing about this is something that we can. It's a lifelong practice, and the more we train ourselves, the more easy it becomes. And it's just about understanding those
Mhm.
processes in the mind, understanding what's happening in the body, and then just finding the center more often in that piece.
Now, Ryan, I'm so curious then that you said you've created systems that help that new habit really solidify, let's say, because as we know, 95% of the time we live out of the subconscious mind, where we're just like on autopilot, leaving us 5% to be consciously aware to make a change. And that's why forming a new habit is so difficult, because we live so much of our time out of the subconscious. So do you mind to share, what, I don't know how much time we have to do that, but can you share right now one of the systems that you've created to help solidify a new habit? And just before you go into that, I just want to share that it is so hard to form a new habit in the sense when the way we've been behaving our whole life is unconscious and subconscious, right? And just as an example, as I thought about this, is that I still, we have to wear masks now when we go into places. I still, after 2 years, forget my mask in the car. When I get to the door, I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
oh. I'm like, are you kidding me? After 2 years, I am still not in the habit of wearing my mask. So you can just for that, it's been 2 years. How hard it can be to form a new habit when you've been a certain way for most of your life. And so I am so that's why you're like, I have systems. I'm like, okay, I want what these systems are because creating new habits are hard, especially when they are really ingrained deep within us. And a lot of times we don't even realize that they're there because we're on autopilot. So please share a system that you think has been most beneficial to solidify a habit that is really life changing, let's say.
Yeah. So I always have people start with why, and I think it's very important to understand why you want to change. And whenever you feel pulled back to your old habits and your old routines, you just remember that why. So I think that's just something that people really need to kind of hold on to as far as that anchor. But as far as really making that change, I think it's the morning routine for a lot of people. I have people wake up earlier and protect just even 15 minutes to start every morning. That's your time. That means no tech. That means you wake up, you have your lemon water, you hydrate, but then you've got your 15 minutes at least to protect time for you before all the noise, before the family needs, before everything else happens. And doing that every single day. So this is where there's a system. It's called doing the work every day. It's consistency with the practice. So I create practices for people that allow them to start very slow. Um, I just go through step by step by step because it really does come down to that consistency to really burn in that new wiring. And but I think the morning routine is the wonderful way because I've just seen so many people myself included, who was like a self-proclaimed, I can't wake up in the morning when I became an entrepreneur. I'm like, all those years in corporate and school, I'm not getting up till the sun's shining, but I love my early dark mornings, and I don't always feel like getting up, but that's where it happens. That's where the magic happens. I feel as you get your formal practice in there, and then anything else you do on top of that for the day is bonus. We support those formal practices, as I mentioned, with
Mm.
having people stop throughout the day, doing checkpoints. There's a split second wake up call, or stop breathing, or 4-7-8 breathing, or something, just to stop in the daytime to sort of create that awareness and that wedge into that subconscious program that you described. So, but the morning routine is where we lock it in. And then I do layer in a system of habits sort of sequentially after, including, a cold shower, which most people like really cringe at first, but you'd be shocked how many people really love that practice. But again, once you kind of get over the hump of the early resistance to that, physically and mentally.
No, all of those sound great. And what I loved about the morning practice idea is that a lot of times the day gets ahead of us. No, I love idioms, but I get them wrong all the time. It's like it gets away or something like that. And before you know it, it's like the end of the day and you're like, oh, shoot, I didn't do like, some of that self care, let's say that self love stuff that we should checking
Yeah.
in with ourselves and all and realigning that we don't because the world again takes us away. And I don't know. Do you know the idiom that I'm thinking of?
I don't remember it either, but the day does get away on us for sure. And
Yeah,
it's
that
and
something like that.
we keep
Yes,
pushing, we push it out to the end. If when it comes to meditation, it seems to be, oh, I'll get to it, I'll get to it, and a day goes by, 2 days goes by, and then it's gone. And
yeah,
so that's why it's that self care, that inner sanctuary, that self love in the morning, just to really sit there and just give yourself
mhm,
your full attention inward and put it.
uh,
Most people wake up and they grab their phone in the morning, and it's the first thing they do, and it's not usually the best news, or it's
no,
something, and somebody else's attention pulling yours towards them or towards something other than
mhm.
you. So just that real protecting it, protecting it, protecting it every morning.
Yes, yes, I love it. Now, Brian, if people want to connect with you after the show, learn more about your program, where can they do that?
BrianCoons.com or Brian Coons on any of the social handles.
I want to thank you so much for being on the show today and sharing the ways that we can return to the peace within ourselves.
Thank you. I'm grateful to be here. Thank you.
Stay tuned as after the break, I'll be speaking with a stress coach, Andrew Oakes. We'll continue here on Soul Liberty TV. See you after the break.
Solivity Magazine and Beyond Words Publishing want to remind you about the importance of continuing to follow public health guidelines to protect yourself, your loved ones, and your community. Please continue to wear a mask, wash your hands, and watch your distance. Please visit these sites for further information about how to stay safe from COVID-19 into the new year. Remember, love protects us.
I'm excited to introduce my next guest. He's a mental health advocate, stress coach, and speaker. Andrew Oakes, hello and welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, Andrew, if you could maybe start off by telling us a little bit about yourself that led you to do the work that you do today with your clients, please.
It was a complete accident. So the first 27 years of my life was kind of plagued by these black clouds that never went away. And I call those black clouds now trapped in sad, which is stress, anxiety, and depression. Some people may have one, some people may have all, but it's when you're trapped in all of them, it just seems like complete darkness. I was always a giver. But at age 27, I changed my life and I escaped those dark clouds. So instead of giving money or helping somebody move, now I'm able to give something way bigger because I found the light that kind of made the darkness leave. And now I see everybody else that might have a dark spot. And now I get to go shine that light and turn the light on in their chest. And
Yeah.
like, it's addictive. There's no other word for it but addictive to turn the light on in other people's lives. I started helping people around me. Everybody took notice. This guy's stressed, anxious, and depressed all the time. All of a sudden, he's different. Hey, what are you doing? You on drugs? No, I was before though. And so I just started helping the people
Mhm.
around me. Then my phone started ringing. He was like, "Hey, you coach my cousin John." I'm like, "Coach your cousin John? Like, I'm not a softball coach. What are you talking about?" Like, I talked to him, I had a conversation with him, and I told him some pointers how what I did to solve my stress, and it just evolved and eventually put videos out online, and now I'm doing public speaking. It's just growing. So that's what I do. I help people break up with SAD, stress, anxiety, and depression.
Yes, I love that acronym. I love that. It's cute because you think of sad in one way, but then sadness can be all of those different things plus some other things and more. So, yeah, I love that. Thank you. So, because today's show is about returning to peace and to the peace, love, and happiness that we are. But many of us are not living in peace, that we are living in stress. And so, if you could tell us a little bit more about how, as a stress coach, how does stress affect our lives?
Oh yeah. So we all know if we've ever turned on the news or listened to the doctor, he tells you how negatively stress impacts our life. The number one cause of death in the world is heart disease, and it's believed that stress is the leading contributor to heart disease. But we know all this, and we know that we don't perform well when we're stressed out. So let's take a moment, like an idea here. If we're having a really bad day, we're stressed out, and we have to get ready, we're running late, and we have to get ready, and we're walking through our bedroom, and we bump our knee on a dresser. We hit our knee and like, oh, we get so angry about that pain. So when we're stressed out, that's one response. But let's take it to a different place. What about when we were going out on a first date with somebody, maybe they were out of our league? We're super excited to go on this date. We're running behind, we're a little bit late, same scenarios, but we're excited about what's going to happen in our life. And we bump our knee on the dresser. We hit our knee, bam, like, oh, total different experience. Same exact pain. So we know that it affects us in our moods, it affects our relationships, but it affects something else. So I figured out the more and more I help people, I started to realize that there's some correlations. So if I asked you to rate your stress on a 10 scale and you said you were at about a 9, I would deduct from that that you're probably about a 1 in happiness. I'm trying to see this on the screen as I reverse this. So you're about a 1 in happiness. But see, if I could help you pull your stress down from a 9
Mm.
to a 3, you would be at a 7 in happiness. So stress plus happiness equals 10. If you feel like you've been stressed out for a long time or you can't find happiness in your life, even you keep acquiring the things, you got the job status, you got the car, you got the relationship that you wanted, you got the 2.5 kids that you wanted, you got everything that you wanted in life, but you still didn't find happiness, there's a good chance that there is stress that's coming along with you that you haven't figured out how to manage. So when we don't manage our stress, it's actually costing us our happiness as well.
Mhm. So how do we then return to a place of comfort and peace and happiness within ourselves?
Okay. So I put together these 5 steps to happiness, some small tweaks, 5 steps to happiness using stress tips. So flipping this around a little bit. And number one is to become completely honest with yourself. I understand how hard it is to be vulnerable. It takes courage to be honest with yourself because it's easy to escape the truth because sometimes we don't want to look at those ugly parts. But here's what happens. We actually invite the darkness into our life when we run from the truth because you can't hide the truth in plain sight. You have to hide it in darkness. So you are literally inviting that darkness into your life when you're running or hiding
Mm.
the truth. But when you run from the truth, you're not going to find happiness in running from the truth. The only thing you'll find in that is stress and anxiety. That's step number one. Step number two, break up with I have to. Now, this one's rooted in
Andrew,
gratitude.
just before we do that, I'm just going to maybe I could give a comment
Yeah.
after each
Oh,
point because there's probably
yeah.
something that I want to say on that. And I love that first point because it it incorporates accountability. That it's very important for us to do that is to become accountable and understand that we are in charge of our lives instead of pointing fingers at everybody else. So we are often more say a more victim or have a more victim mentality than a victor mentality where we're more apt to point fingers at everybody else for how we're feeling instead of looking at ourselves and acknowledging those feelings instead of or masking them, as you said, that we often do too, that we don't want to look at them, we put them in the closet under the rug, we mask them at events and parties and alcohol and drugs and all these other things instead of really taking a step back and looking at ourselves and taking that accountability. So that's step number one. Absolutely true that we have to look at it instead of covering it up and hiding it and masking it and avoiding it and all those things.
And it's easy to find distraction, right, in today's world.
Mhm. Yes, yes. All right, step number two.
Step number 2 is break up with I have to. If you study anything about anybody, any big name in self-development or happiness space, even meditation, mindfulness, it's always a key ingredient in every single one of those all the way across is
Mhm.
gratitude. And this one's rooted in gratitude. So when we say we have a flat tire, we're having a rough day, and we come out and say, I'm late, already late for work. I have to change this tire. No, 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 no. What if we can flip that around? What if we can say, I get to? It changes the energy of the sentence. I get to do this. Because there's graveyards all around town that are filled with people that would love to do the things that we're complaining about, that
Mhm.
we have to do. And this one hit me hard, and I this was the most guilty for me, and it was a hard switch, but it was perfect for me because when I can grab onto something simple, that's magic. And this is how simple it is. It's just change I have to I get to. And then I think about, maybe not the graveyard people, but maybe the people that are on their deathbed. Maybe they would love to come change this tire. Maybe
Mhm.
they would come to love to do these little to-dos. So changing I have to I get to, one simple thing, all rooted in gratitude.
Yes, yes. I add the word I should, the shoulds and have to. I should do this because my parents expect me to. I should do this because this is what a good mom does. I should. We should ourselves a lot too. So yes, that's a great point. And again, it kind of ties into the first one of us being that victim mentality, that why me, that oh I have to do this and oh and all of that instead of I get to, which is much more empowering, which is much more the victor mentality. So and absolute gratitude is directly correlated with happiness. So that makes sense. But I love how you've put both of them together like that. That sounds good.
I like the way you use Victor and victim
Mm,
mentality back and forth interchange. That's I need to start working on those as well.
mm, we
I
all
want to
do.
do I
We
want to
all
do something longer.
okay.
Right.
All right, step number three.
All right. So it's not the mountain up ahead that wears you down. It's the pebble in your shoe. It's not the mountain up ahead that wears you down. It's the pebble in your shoe. Muhammad Ali, one of the greatest. We look at stress and we think, all of my stress is because of finances. That's a mountain. So we're assigning all of our stress to these mountains. I have financial stress, I have relationship stress, or I have job stress. But what are we actually doing about the pebbles in our shoe? What about the nose hair tickling your face in the middle of a board meeting? Maybe we should do something about these pebbles. What about your pants have gotten too tight? Or maybe you're cheap and you need to replace your socks because they have holes in them. There's little discomforts that are wearing you down throughout the day. So, my step number 3 is just to simply become aware of all those little pebbles that are wearing you down and begin to write them down on a list. That's step
Mhm.
number 3.
Okay, and does it tie into step number four?
Yeah, they're going to be tied
Okay,
together. So
okay, please go. Go ahead.
step number 4 is to highlight all the things that you can actually do something about on the list. The things that you cannot do anything about on the list, just scratch them out and repeat this with me. Today, I refused to stress myself out about things that I cannot change. And then step number 5 is to take action on that list and start to remove those little discomforts from your life. As soon as you start to remove those little discomforts from your life, your brain is going to reward you. Happiness is going to find you. And it happens very, very quickly. And I hate to use this reference, but it works really, really well. The human bladder, it's a discomfort. And that's your brain saying, hey, you need to address the situation we got going on here. We're full. Imagine driving home and you really, really have to go, and you're shaking about, and you get home, you can barely get the key in the door, and you rush in and you start to go to the restroom. As soon as you start to go to the restroom, like, ah, I made it. Relief starts taking over you right away, right from the beginning. So the same way is you have that discomfort in your bladder, you have a discomfort in your life. So as soon as you start marking these things off the list,
Mm.
brain recognizes discomfort's relieving, or discomfort instead of adding up, discomfort's leaving. It rewards you with all those happiness chemicals. That is the creme de la creme.
Mhm. That makes sense. It would be important for us to deal with all the small things because all the small things add up. It's the same thing with gratitude, that it is all acknowledging all the little things that are going well in our life that overall add up to a feeling of gratefulness and happiness, and that dealing with all the little small things make us also feel successful, right? That, sometimes we want to be at the top of the mountain, but we don't just jump up there. It's a journey, and that if the journey is painful, then then it's going to be a really long hike up the mountain. And so it makes sense that we would deal with all those little small things, and almost like, removing that kind of weight off our shoulders or taking the pebbles out of our shoe so that the journey up the mountain is much more pleasurable. And that in the process of doing that, we can enjoy the journey a lot more.
100%.
And so, Andrew, when we get to step number 5 and we've removed some of the petals and pebbles, and we've acknowledged all the little things that are causing us discomfort and stress, what happens on that chart that you showed us? That every little stress pebble that we've removed is then increasing our happiness on that scale?
Absolutely. Yeah, so it is directly correlated. So I had these pre-screens for clients that I was sending out because it was a complete accident, the coaching thing, remember? But I had to build these different executive clients like paperwork, and I wanted to know a little bit more about them going into the call. So I had them to do these pre-screens, and I'm trying to get them to rate their level of happiness, their rate their level of stress. And then I realized there was a direct correlation. So if you do remove stress from your life, the relief is going to come. As that relief is coming, it shoves that scale down. The stress side of the scale gets shoved down really, really fast. Even though you have some big things still out there that you have to tackle, when you're removing it, just it pushes that scale down so quick. And if you were at a 1 in happiness before and a 9 in stress, even if you're at like a 4 in stress still and a 6 in happiness, you're going to feel like you are happier than you've ever been in your life. It's amazing the difference that small of a difference can make.
So, Andrew, did you happen maybe to, with all the clients that you're working with, is there a commonality in the pebbles that people need to deal with? What are those pebbles that maybe we don't want to necessarily acknowledge, but we should? Maybe what, and tied into that, if there's some pebbles that are a little bit larger that maybe we don't necessarily want to deal with, but then if when we do, it dramatically increases our happiness because of that. So have you noticed that there's any commonalities in what these pebbles are in general?
The most common, well, the most common thing people to blame their stress on is relationships and finance, right? But those are
Mm.
mountains. We know that. The other little pebbles, it's almost always chores. It's just little knick-knacky
Mm.
chores. Like you bring the cup in from the car and you put it on the desk, but your cup holder is dirty. So when you put this on your desk or some papers, now you have that dirty little ring, that filthy little ring sitting on your paperwork. So it's always these little minor things, and it's all kind of like chore related, little things that we can take action on. It's
Mhm.
generally always chores. Now slightly different chores, but generally just upkeep and maintenance on our today to day.
Now, that water actually reminded me of something else that you like to talk about, something about our glass, that it's important that it's actually not full, because we have that saying that it's important for our glass to be full and overflowing. in order for us to be giving of ourselves so that we never feel depleted, right? It kind of goes back to that, put your oxygen mask on first so that you can be your optimum self and show up in the world as you need to. But you have taken that analogy of the water glass and done something different with it. So if you could maybe speak about that.
Actually, I'll switch it up for you. I'll use the balloon as capacity. So everybody has a different capacity for stress. Now you have to know your capacity for stress. Some people say on a road trip, we'll go back to the bladder. It's a great reference because it has a capacity. So some people can make it 5 hours into a road trip, never have to go tinkle, and some people have a small capacity. And I won't lie, I had a very small capacity for stress early on. And as I'm getting better, the more capacity I have. But I'll teach you a really quick way to gain capacity in your life right now. So we know that the financial stress is a big stress that's in everybody's life. So that is going to take up some room in our balloon. It's going to take up some capacity. When the brain meets a discomfort, it pumps energy into the body. That energy is a stress energy. So stress is energy inside the body. It's an emotion, energy in motion, because your brain is giving you the energy to remove the discomfort that is in your life. So if you came home, you were dog tired. Give you a reference. You were dog tired, and you went up to take a shower, and you get in the shower, slowly get in the shower. You don't really feel like it, but you're dirty, but you have to get in the shower before you go to bed. You get in the shower, you pull the shower popper, or you pull the shower and turn the water on, but somebody's left that little popper on. Cold water comes out the shower head and hits your skin. All of a sudden, you have the reaction skills of a ninja. You yank the shower head off and point it away from your body, or you duck underneath it, or you put the shower curtain in between you and it, or you jump out the shower altogether. Brain met a discomfort, filled body with energy. The same lifeless body is now like energized and charged up. Now imagine your brain meeting discomfort and pumping. So your brain meets a discomfort and it pumps into the body. Now this is the vessel that we're pretending. So we have financial stress. That's a pretty good size, right? What about relationship stress? I've got to drop the kids off at school. Um, Financial, relationship, work stress. But now you have the nose hair tickling your face in the meeting. You bought pretty shoes, but you didn't buy comfortable shoes. Your socks got a hole in it. An example, I bought these tissues because they were the only ones they had, and these tissues are a bummer. This is what a real pack of tissues looks like half the size, right? But I didn't want to throw these out, but now I will. I'm removing the discomfort from my life. And when we remove a discomfort from our life, it allows us to let air out. But what if we're just continuously pumping air and pumping energy into the body? We're going to be like, feels like we're on caffeine all the time. How much air do you think I could put into this balloon before stress becomes anxiety? Before I start to worry this is going to blow up in my face? So when we start to
Mm-hmm.
remove pebbles, we start to remove air from our balloon. One of the quickest ways you can remove air from your balloon is stop putting it in it. Stop watching the news. It's negativity. It's putting pebbles in your shoe, pebbles that you can do nothing about it. Remember we agreed a little bit ago that today you will no longer stress yourself out about things you can't change. News, that's all stuff we can't change. We'll work with the pebbles that we can and remove air from our balloon. So when we have air removed, when this thing's maxed out and I poke it with a tack, if I even get close to it, maybe even with a shirt, it could blow up. Well, that's how
Mm-hmm.
we're walking around. That's how we're presenting ourselves in life. But if I take it all the way down like this and I got all this capacity, I could poke this thing all day long and it's not going to pop.
I love it. I love it. It's much better than the glass one. I love that. It's so
Thank you.
good. Yeah, and I know you're so good at this, coming up with a visual representation to convey your ideas. But yeah, it's brilliant in that when we are connected to the love, peace, and happiness that we are, when we're in alignment with that, true, the world could like poke at us and all those, and it doesn't cause like it has no impact and no effect on us, and that we can still show up in the world as we need to. And so I love that. And I love also the analogy too of, the big puffs of air being the bigger pebbles or annoyances in our life, but how the little ones add to it as well. And that you have a lot of little ones that it's still causing the balloon to expand and potentially get to a point that then, something devastating happens, right? You get sick, now you're in the hospital. Like that's what kind of likened what came
Hmm.
to mind there is that when you're on like max uh inflation there, that and tightness and all of that, because that's what happens to the balloon when it's so inflated, that a little tiny thing could just cause it to explode. So yeah, that was great.
And we're not meant to explode. We don't want to blow up on the boss. We don't want to blow up at the spouse because sometimes it's damage we can't return to.
Yes, absolutely. Now, Andrew, people want to connect with you after the show. How can they do that?
So the easiest way to do it is go to stressreliefheadquarters.com. There's tons of free resources on there for you. And if you need to get in contact with me, all the contact information's over there as well.
I just want to thank you so much for being on the show today and sharing more about the ways and the steps that we can take to deal with our stress so that we can come back to the happiness that we are.
Thank you for having me, and thanks for what you do. Thanks for shining your light into the world.
Thank you. I'd like to leave you with the thought for the day. In a time with so much uncertainty, how do you remain calm and not react to the turbulent situations that arise in the world every day? How do you avoid the fight or flight response in the body when particular circumstances could cause you to feel anxious? When your responsibilities feel overwhelming and you're having a hard time coping with it all, do you pause and think, what is my life trying to tell me right at this moment? What is my body trying to tell me right now? How you respond to difficult things that have happened to you or are happening around you can mean the difference between a life of anger, anxiety, depression, and despair, or a life of joy, peace, tranquility, and hope. Especially in uncertain times, forces out there feel beyond our control, and fear can hold us back. Ultimately, it is not the predictable political or personal circumstances outside of us that determine whether we respond with fear or with peace and hope. Instead, one must accept the reality that external events are not under our control. The only thing we can control is our response to those events. Your feelings of fear, worry, and uncertainty are really your spirit's way of whispering and saying to you, I'm in flux. Something is off balance here. Feeling anxious or stressed is your body's way of telling you that what is happening around you and within you is not in alignment with your higher self. This is your body sending you signals to take action, to realign yourself with your true nature. I encourage you to open yourselves up to trying some or all of the strategies that were discussed on the show today to return you to the love, peace, and happiness within you. Thank you for joining me today, and I look forward to being with you next week on the Steps to Happiness show with Teresa Greco.
Teresa Greco after the show for coaching, workshops, and speaking engagements, you can visit her website at teresagreco.ca or by email at stepstotruehappiness@gmail.com or follow her on Instagram at TeresaGreco_Steps to Happiness or on Facebook at Steps to True Happiness with Teresa Greco.